Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
All right, Inka, thank you so much for coming on and welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to start with just kind of understanding how you came to be co-founder and CEO of Voima Ventures, which is a kind of deep tech focused venture fund. So if you could explain what is deep tech and how did you end up doing deep tech as the first or maybe the only VC focused in Finland, focused only on deep tech, or?
Yeah, and we already know we're focusing in Nordics and Baltics.
Yes,
so we're one of the very rare ones that invests purely to science-based startups. So deep tech is a very general, fashionable world now in the world of startups and VCs, due to the fact that everyone has suddenly figured out that, okay, if we want to solve, let's say, energy crisis or there's this major AI boom, everyone wants to do deep tech and this cool stuff. But we've defined deep tech as follows. So we're basically talking about innovations that have roots in scientific research. And typically this scientific research has paved the way for a new technological innovation, which is typically very difficult to commercialize. But when you succeed in that one, you also end up typically changing the world in a drastic way. So they can be particularly very disruptive. And this is not only in the area of software or AI. We're talking about biotech, energy, food, anything relating to our health, as well as, of course, let's say new materials, quantum-based computing, next generation process chip architectures, and so forth. So deep tech, the way I like to explain it to my mother is that it's not only bits and bytes, it's also like real stuff. So typically there's a hardware or product related innovation combined with software, which makes it quite difficult to take to the market.
That must be very interesting, because one of the things I found, like, there was a disconnect between how VCs, I mean, think like American VCs used to talk about what they're doing, like backing entrepreneurs who are changing the world. And then you look at the portfolio and it's just like MarTech and a lot of SaaS and a lot of like apps and things that in my view are not changing the world, at least not for the better. But so it must be very exciting to work with. I mean, some of the technologies you mentioned are like potentially revolutionary, right? For society.
Absolutely, and our mission is really to scale solutions for the people, planet, and industry, which means that these innovations tend to solve major problems we have with the aging society or chronic illnesses, or even democratizing the healthcare system. It's not fully accessible for everyone today. Or for the planet, meaning that we sustain resources with new materials, or we completely disrupt the traditional means of producing or storing energy, or we provide a new ways of mobility, or sort of use space tech in order to predict what's actually happening on Earth, or industries which obviously have to transform to planetary imbalance. So we've built our thesis around these major global problems, and we believe that this can be the highest value generating opportunities during the next 10 years. So it's nothing like, hi-fi science fiction that we're focusing into companies that would be reality in 50 years. But at the same time, this purposefulness is super important. We're living in the Nordic countries, which has probably the most difficult, and Finland particularly, the most difficult demographic structure in the whole Europe. So really highly aging population, and very little birth in the society, and very little immigrant flow, as we know, particularly in Finland. So we need to also attract the best talent to these companies. And typically nowadays, the best talent works in companies that want to grow, but also are purposeful. So most of these deep tech companies tick the boxes in both senses.
Okay, so there's a lot of then talent wanting to work for these types of companies. It's maybe gotten more common and popular for like people who are involved in research to now also become involved with startups. And there's lots of tools and people working to help facilitate that kind of transition. Is the main like bottleneck capital, or what's the what's the kind of bottleneck do you see for taking like all this knowledge and commercializing into like really revolutionary products and services?
Well, you asked about this question about founding Voima Ventures. So we launched the fund in 2019, and that was our first fund. That we call that fund number 2. It was 45 million with a 50 million top-up fund, and we were really the first ever fund in the Nordics to invest into science spin-outs from universities, also other deep tech companies with scientific foundation, from pre-seed, seed to early A rounds, so these early seed stage companies. But the variation tends to be the technology readiness level, what these companies have. And at the point of time when I looked at the macros, already in US and China, the share of deep tech investments within the venture asset class category was between 35 to 40%. In Europe, it was around 25%. So Europe has been lagging behind here. That's why there's a big momentum around it now. But in the Scandinavian, Nordics and Finland, it was roughly 15%. And at the same time, we have one of the best university systems in the world. We do a lot of basic and applied research. We have the highest per capita number of engineers, really high number of unicorn startups, a lot of growth momentum, entrepreneurial talent growing in the universities and all of that. So you look at the mega trends that, okay, massive amount of problems to be solved, big momentum around startups, and a lot of these technologies nurturing in the research institutions. There wasn't nobody sort of taking them out in the same mechanism these software companies like Volts and gaming startups like Supercells have been grown, or Spotify's of the world. And for me, I have close to 30 years in tech. Through my career, I've been an investor and a founder in more than 7 startups, and I've been a CEO and a head of product and head of marketing and sales. And even during my angel investment journey before Voima Ventures, I invested more or less to anything that sort of grows and is interesting. But at the end of the day, it's been a lot of unnecessary crap, if you think about it. We have only certain amount of time to preserve the planet. We need to make this world meaningful for our children as well. So finally, I got to do something really meaningful. And the story goes like this. I got a phone call from VTT, the National Technology Research Center of Finland. They had been spinning out deep tech companies already for the last 15 years, but they were just very passive owner. They spun the companies out, invested a bit if there was a lead investor, and they were sort of left alone. So some of the companies did well, some of them didn't. And they felt that, okay, a new deep tech VC fund is needed in Finland, mainly to fund their own spin-offs. And I got a call and request, could I help them to set this fund up? And I said, like, hell no. I had been trying to build my own venture fund earlier. Anyone who is in this industry knows that it's extremely difficult journey to build a new venture capital fund. Investors in these funds are pension funds, institutional investors, family offices, national players like Tesi and others in each similar country. And they tend to be very conservative. They look at a team and they consider that, would I invest to their fund? The fund lifetime is 10 years or additional years on top of it. Has this team really done it before? And I've been part of these journeys before. And most often the answer is no, because you don't have the history of venture investments and you sort of can't have it before you have a fund. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg. At the same time, this multi-$100 trillion industry, only 2% of capital is managed by women, founded funds or women-led funds. So there is a unconscious bias in the industry as well. I've never let that bother myself, but my first reaction was like, okay, to whom would I sell this? Which investor would really be willing to take the leap? But then I look at the macro numbers and I saw really this unhidden potential. And also we built a completely new strategy and all of that. We took into account many different aspects. And the main important thing was to say that, okay, this is not a VTT tied fund. We're building a functioning deep tech ecosystem to the Nordics. All the other co-investors are willing to join along. Everyone can invest to their spin-offs, like into any other university spin-offs and so forth. And you spoke about this great entrepreneurial team. So this was from the beginning, part of the thesis. We said that, yes, we have our view on the technologies, view of the megatrends, view where we want to go into. Is it, for example, hydrogen, not necessarily the full stack, but maybe some value-adding components. But there always has to be a great entrepreneur. And if the science team coming to us wanting to found a company or building their company doesn't have that great entrepreneur, will bring that to the company. Because what these companies tend to lack is a commercialization capability and that growth mindset, that quick iteration, customer centricity, value adding sales, building this sort of a bigger solution for customers instead of just tiny innovation where they think like, okay, this one tiny bit or innovation is enough. And you don't do that if you want to grow a $500 million or $1 billion worth company.
No. So if the entrepreneur team and the founder is kind of key, do you typically find that you're able to take people with a really deep technical science background and turn them into these entrepreneurs? Or do you have to have a combination where you combine like some of the commercial expertise and mindset with a science-backed team? And just in general, you know, given that you've been involved with this a number of years, has there been any big shifts in what you look for when you evaluate lots of companies, lots of different teams? What do you look for? How much of it is like pattern recognition, gut feel versus like objective and or like quantitative analysis?
I think it's a bit of both. So I would say like best teams, science backgrounded women or men, with researcher background and strong scientific knowledge, let it be, for example, biotech, building some sort of a next generation precision therapy platform, whether that's, for example, on stem cells or something, they can grow to become great entrepreneurs. So many of these individuals and teams, they're so smart that if they expose themselves to this rapid development of a startup and they take the investor feedback and they have good advisors and this growth mentality, they grow to become great entrepreneurs. Then at the same time, I'm not a scientist myself, or I'm not even an engineer. I've studied economics in university way back. But I've been always very curious on technology. So super interested how it works, what can it possibly do, what is the competition, what is it based on. So I always say like, it's not rocket science, even I can be a chairperson of a space company. So I'm saying like, it comes with both ingredients. So you need to have commercially minded people who are very interested on customer and market opportunities and are capable of translating those needs and requirements to the tech development. And then you need to have a tech team who is very customer oriented. So those tend to be the ingredients. The reason why investors talk a lot about serial entrepreneurs is that there's just very few of these outlier individuals who really succeed with their first company. Typically, you do a lot of mistakes. It's tough to hire a good person. It's even tougher to fire a bad person. It's tough to raise capital, but it's even tougher to grow the company, to get revenues, all of this. So having one serial entrepreneur in the team always is a plus. So that's definitely learning what we've gained throughout the years. So we're currently building our fund number 3. So we're roughly at 110 million. And we closed that fund and we're actively investing from there. And you asked about our learnings and thesis. So we have 3 areas we invest into: green transformation for future planet balance, exponential health solutions, we call that for polarized societies. We do everything but drug development, so precision therapies, medical tech, even health tech, but with scientific foundation and scalable technology, digital components. And third category, what we call is game changers. And it's a tough category because it's difficult to say what the game changer is.
It's quite broad, yeah.
Yeah, typically we know afterwards what was a game changer. Maybe Tesla was a game changer because it changed the whole industry to electric vehicles. Or maybe even Oatly was a game changer of its time because it brought this vegan-based sort of a oat-based milk to the markets, and was able to create consumer pull and push many other players and the whole industry to new direction. But we look at, in the game changer category, we talk about semiconductors, optics, photonics, quantum technologies, AI platforms, platform technologies that can provide frog leaps to whole industries, even space tech.
Is there any, you mentioned a lot of different areas, is there any one of them where we in the Nordics or Baltic countries have a kind of unfair or natural competitive advantage? I'm thinking, like you mentioned, US and China have been investing not just more in percentage, but in absolute like dollars and euros, like way more than us. and they probably have some advantages. So is there any kind of place, specific area or industry where it would make sense for companies here to focus on when it comes to deep tech?
Yeah, you need to focus because we're a small and nimble opportunity, a market in the Nordics and Baltics. Yes, we're roughly the size of Bay Area. The amount of venture capital investments last year was in this domain, 6.4 billion euros. In the peak year in 2019 was roughly 19 billion. So what scarcity? Capital is scarcity, absolutely. Particularly capital for this early stage frog leap growing where you don't yet have full proof of the business. Like in software company, you might say that, okay, there's a proof of business, the product is working, customers like it. The team knows that if they put 5 euros to a marketing, they always get like 50 back over time from the customer. So that's called, repeatable business model. And you know that, okay, if we invest more, we can actually grow this business. In deep tech, it's rarely like that. You've developed a quantum processor chip, and you've proven that you can take it from 1 qubit to 6 qubits to 10 to 100 qubits, but still the whole ecosystem is there yet to be grown. So this growth capital is definitely needed. So coming back to the strengths of the ecosystem, it's typically the area where the research is the leading of its kind in the world. This tends to be in the areas where we already have big companies. So material sciences, that's the heritage of our pulp and paper industry. Of course, chemical and process industry, they tend to be process industry innovations, but there are a lot of companies working with, like, for example, food innovations or biorefinery, or sort of a next generation products which are bio-based. Other area is optics and photonics, highest per capita amount of patents in the world in the area of photonics in Finland, in the world. There are a lot of, so there's all these companies from AR, VR, Varios, and other sort of and that's of course a big heritage of Nokia ecosystem, microelectronics. So that all goes to MEMS, semiconductors, all of that. So that's a big opportunity. And then on this region, I would say, of course, Norway is shining with energy related innovations. There's a lot of subsidies for that, and those tend to be very capital heavy. And then Denmark with pharma, because Novo is creating a massive halo. Estonia or Baltic countries, very strong with AI and scaling, digital innovations, and Sweden a bit of everything, very big market as well. So each of these countries have a bit of a different strengths, strongholds, but at the same time, all of them need more capital. They need more access to global markets. They all have certain challenges, and they're really understanding which ones to choose and which ones to go with. I would sort of say, like, one rule is that you go with the best with their sort of a technological innovation combined with this commercial talent.
That's a great kind of overview of the different strengths that we have in the different markets, and it certainly, to me as a lay person, is not something I really consider. I mean, sometimes you read about ISI or like IQM and all these companies, and you're like, whoa, I wonder where did that come from. Somewhere like in Otaniemi, you understand that, but you don't necessarily understand like why it is that all of a sudden a Finnish company is like world leading in this specific field. But so you meet a lot of different companies, probably a lot of them at quite early stages. Valuations is always, I'm guessing, a really tricky thing when it comes to startups. And when you have a deep tech company that's like, the product, I mean, the ecosystem is not there, the market isn't there, the product may be years and years and years ahead or like away. So how does it, so how do you approach valuation? And how do you even figure out if it's just hot air, if it's just sci-fi that they're like, you probably hear a lot of very kind of high-flying, technologies that potentially could be really revolutionary, but how do you go about doing the due diligence to figure out if this is something real? Because I'm thinking like it's on the cutting edge. Like there's, who's going to be able to validate whether or not this team is doing something real, or because they're the only ones in the world who are doing it. So how do you approach those two, like due diligence and valuation, when it comes to deep tech startups?
Let's start with valuations. It's quite simple math at the end of the day. We have roughly 110 million fund. We're going to do around 25 investments from the fund to 25 companies. Initial ticket is around 1.5 to 3 million euros. Then, of course, typically this is not the only capital that the companies tend to take. At the same time, they might have other investors. We often have other deep tech funds investing together with us. There might be Business Finland supporting in R&D, or a local governmental agency in Sweden or Denmark. And with the total funding, the company tends to have a runway of something like 2 years. And with these 2 years, you need to reach certain milestones where we as an investors believe that the next funding round will be raised. There will be a valuation which should be like 2 to 3x from the start valuation. And this math sort of goes on and goes on from, pre-seed to seed to early A to A, B, C, and at some point of time there's an exit. And we of course look at the market opportunity, we look at the value add that the company can bring, the presumed business model, and we start calculating, let's say a little bit back, like, okay, let's assume that this company would be worth $1 billion. What would it require? What would be the hard commercial metrics for it? What kind of revenue? What kind of customers? What kind of market share? What kind of offering? What has to happen? And you start to look like future back this valuation.
Wow.
This is the way we look at it. And then we think like, firstly, is it reachable with what tiny thing seed what they have? What is the ambition level of the founders? And that's one way to look at valuation. Is it too much or too little? And then, of course, the other way is this benchmark. You have a lot of databases you can follow on, the valuation developments. You talk to your peers, and we, of course, see a lot of the valuations. So typically in the pre-seed seed stage, the valuations tend to be somewhere like between 5 to 20 million pre-money. And pre-money is the valuation before the capital injection. So then you have the capital and all of that. And then it tends to sort of grow from there. And there you need to be very clear with the value creation, because it's very different value creation journey. You mentioned ISI. They were 8 years before revenue. Then they were suddenly 200 million in revenue. So journey of a deep tech company is very different to software company. On the due diligence, we do that top down and bottom up. So let's take example of healthcare investment, what we just recently did. So I'm turning soon 50, so I've been going through this personal journey of peri-menopause and menopausal sort of a journey during the last 5 years. And of course, as a science geek and a bit of a life hacker, you sort of see that there's nothing there for women in the market. So we started to work on our own investment thesis, that we look at the market, we looked at the scientific innovations, we looked at the startups out there. We started to look like what could really interest us. What could we be in the bigger scale looking for? What could really be a great unicorn opportunity? And then at the same time, we started to bottom up look for companies, and we found one. We haven't announced it yet, but they have a home test for estrogen, progesterone, and FSH. And on the science part, we did a validation with experts. One of our team members is a molecular biologist. I've developed lateral flow tests in my background. We interviewed the scientists. We looked at what kind of a scientific collaboration they have ongoing. And okay, it's a pretty good tick on the box if you're working with the Stanfords and Harvards and others of the world. So the scientific validation typically on the due diligence side comes from the team's ability to communicate to us what have they done, how was the research done, who are the top professors involved. That's the way to do that. Then if you're dealing with something really hard like CPU architecture or something like that, so really hardware-centric or semiconductor space, you need to find a specialist who helps you. But typically we agree on the high-level investment terms first, and then we go on with the more deeper study. We understand these domains quite a lot, and hey, look, we have now over 40 portfolio companies in these 3 funds. So we always know someone who knows the space. It helps.
That's really, really interesting. So basically, going back to kind of what you mentioned about valuation, you're able to reverse engineer and map out the entire journey from like to very, very high valuations. I'm guessing this is like knowledge.
And sorry, so you sort of need to do that, because typically you allocate from a VC fund, you allocate around 20 to 30% to initial investments. So all of that capital left, like in our fund, roughly like 85 million, is left for follow-ons. Yes. So you need to plan this value creation journey and where you're going to bet. And typically not all the companies get all the funding. It's like the best companies tend to get the highest amount of capital.
Yeah, which makes sense given the power law distribution of these VC firms. So given that you're doing this, I'm guessing do you get involved like really early, like pre-seed or?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So roughly I would say like 10 to 15 investments from our current fund will be on this pre-seed seed stage. We call that sort of a initial phase. So we would invest roughly $1 million to 1.5, and then the remaining 10-ish are between 3 to 5 million as initial tickets.
Yeah. So I'm guessing like the teams that you're meeting then at the early stages, they may be like really deep into tech, but they don't necessarily understand the market and the value creation, all that. So I'm guessing you're kind of, as you're doing the due diligence and valuation yourselves, you're also helping them. So what kind of role are you as a VC playing with these startups? Are you actively helping them with recruitment, with strategy? Do you have board seats in each portfolio company, or like what does that look like, or does it depend from case to case?
Yes.
That was quick.
So you come to meet with us. Obviously, last year we saw more than 1,000 cases fitting our investment thesis. So three core domains: our geographic region and as well as the stage. And we can't meet all of them face to face, but that's what we accumulate to our database. But you would come to meet us. The best way would be to come through a warm introduction. So maybe a business angel who knows me very well calls me and say like, look, Inka, you definitely need to meet this team. They're super good in this one. We would meet you, and most likely you would have a really good idea or great evidence with your lab-based, pilot or something like that. But there would be also something wrong, totally wrong in the plan. So this is what the job where it really comes interesting. So it's a way to learn to know the team that you might potentially invest into, and you might have to stick with them for the next 7 to 10 years. So you definitely want to learn the team. But you would start improving. So you would take one topic at a time, looking at the tech, the added value, the uniqueness, the competition, the tech roadmap, what is needed, who is needed, all of that. Or like the market, the sub-segments of the customer markets, the initial pilots, the people that they're already talking to and all of that. We're currently investing into one Aalto University startup, and they have a very unique innovation in the area of optics and photonics. And we have, for example, spoken with many of their customers already who are very interested on their solution, and supported the team a lot with their go-to-market strategy. For example, not necessarily going to, I'll just give an example, to automotive route, because automotive market is so long, it takes a long time. Yes. You might want to go, for example, defense currently, because dual-use tech has a high momentum and the customers pay high premium and all of that. It's very slow moving, so you might even need a third customer segment. Yes. So this is a sort of a workshopping we do. At the same time, we map out that, okay, is this really a good founder team? Initially, when they came to us around a year ago, we sort of liked the tech, but we felt that the team was missing a serial entrepreneur, a really solid CEO. Now they have it. So also always the best teams sort of come back and they say like, okay, we heard you. This is what we have now. And that's a great way to test the team as well. And then, of course, you go through the commercial plan, like, okay, this is how much you have funding, where it's going to take you, where you're going to be, how are you really going to be there, what are the things that you're going to do, and all of that. So it's a learning journey for both parties. And the biggest added value, of course, is that we bring a lot of credibility. Yes. So it typically helps the teams to raise more money from really good, solid investors. We introduce them to board members, to potential team members, to potential customers, and we sort of try to. This network, obviously, effect is something that you try to bring to the teams. I'm guessing now, given your kind of track record and position, you probably have the best network in doing deep tech in this region. So like you're the obvious go-to investor that some kind of deep tech startup would be looking for. Absolutely. We want to be the go-to partner when a deep tech founder is thinking of raising the seed. The first round where they bring in a VC. We want to be that. We might not always be the one who comes, but we might come on the next round. And the big added value, of course, is the size of the fund. We're very well positioned. A lot of players out there. They might do a little bit of deep tech. And sometimes people ask us, like, you know, what's your difference to this and this fund? And I say, like, look, we don't do dog food, so we do. So okay, that's a bit nasty way, but we like to work with everyone, and then we often work very closely with some very close friends. Like, you know, we have many investments with Lifeline, but we also have many investments with Navigare, the Wallenberg family in Sweden, but many others as well. So you, of course, establish these networks, and you need to build them constantly. So it's big job of mine nowadays. After I've done this never-ending fundraising for the fund itself, I got some air for a couple of months. I'm like, whew, and then I start again, and then I need to go to these Series A and B investors and meet them and talk about our portfolio and what do we do and how do we create value, because these are the global investors who then are looking into Scandinavia and want to find the best companies. So
you mentioned that we have a lack of a growth fund. So after, you know, a company maybe has been commercialized, like they've gone to market, product market fit exists, you need a fund that comes in and gives them lots more. I'm guessing
like 10 million lead investment ticket.
So why couldn't Voima Ventures start like a growth fund? I mean, you see that, I'm guessing, in the US quite a lot. Earlier funds start doing these growth funds to, like you said, they have the best companies in the portfolio. Why not double down? Couldn't absolutely we could, and do like
probably
a 300-400 million.
Yeah, exactly. So had we started Voima Ventures like 2008, when I started my seed investment company, I think we would be already with the growth fund. But it's also like you need to stick to your knittings. You need to show that you can deliver what you promise to your LPs. These are very long-lasting relationships that you bring and build, but nothing hinders us within a couple of years to do that. I think we missed the one unicorn, you know. Should we have that on the track record? Let's see, should it come? We would be very well positioned to raise a growth fund. Of course, it takes a bit of different team talent as well. So you need to build a bit of this platform that you can run on multiple funds. But also as appealing could be to raise a specialist fund, like a quantum fund or something else. So you really need to time that right. And I think our timing for our third fund was excellent. Nobody else had a track record from deep tech investing like us. And then we had this Nordic-Baltic momentum around it. We've done dual use from the day one. So there's like all of these small ingredients. And then most important thing, what our LPs told us when they joined along. And with this new fund, you know, we have KRR and TESI and Swedish Sum Invest and European Investment Fund, but also big institutional players like Nordea Life and Elo, major Finnish family offices and all of that. They all said that you've been very consistent on delivering what you say that you will deliver. And it's not only about storytelling. You need to have a financial performance. And our sort of numbers are starting to be really promising. So
I'm guessing that's like one of the key things they want is that consistency and clarity. Because then as soon as there's a bit of unclarity, investors get scared. But I think, I'm super impressed by what you've accomplished in a short period of time. So I have no doubt, like you said, it's just give it a few more years and then you'll go. So
this is a long journey. So this new fund, when it's at the end of its lifetime, I will be like 61. I remember talking about these investment terms, the way these fund legal terms are pretty tough one for the people like ourselves who put their ass on the line. And I remember this Keyman clause condition, and there was at some point of time there was a requirement that it should be 10 years and only for me. And I was like, hey, look, I'll be like 60. Are you sure you want to? And then eventually it went different way. But it's so funny. You think like, okay, should I really know what I'm doing in 10 years? Because I've never known. But I think it's a journey. You need to believe that there's a vision and you stick to the vision.
Yeah, that's one thing that people maybe don't realize about. Of course, when you start a company yourself, there's a big commitment, but with a fund, there's really a long time horizon that you're kind of signing up for.
Yeah, and it's that's a really long way to go, and it takes a long time to build this team that really works. So when we started, we were just two partners, myself and our former CFO, and nowadays we're 13. And then, of course, you need to show for your LPs that this team that we're building, can deliver, we can do great investments, they grow in value, they deliver results. The fund 1 is performing, fund 2 is growing in value, we're starting to return the capital, and the fund 3 has the highest potential deep tech company investments.
Yes.
So you have to stay quite focused, and you need to work with people who share the same passion, but then at the same time, the whole structure of your operation has to be such that the younger team feels that they can grow in that journey. That it's not the classical VC model where you have this partner pyramid and nobody's getting through. I've always hated that myself, so I didn't want to build that.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how difficult capital allocation is. Like, it's not a matter. When I've seen various statistics of like the performance of different PE and VC funds, and a lot of them don't perform that well compared to like the market. Like, it's not easy just to gather a lot of money and then just invest it. Like, it's a very difficult thing to do well.
Exactly. And different funds have different strategies. And of course, like when you're an established player, when you've done a couple of unicorns, so 1 or 2, like if you would be in Atomico or like Northzone or some, obviously you have or EQT, your referral network of that inbound deal flow is so strong, and that's something that you need to build on. So you know that you get more quality cases, and you can pick and choose, and you don't have to compete because your added value is so high. But then in the early stages, is it this quantum team or this quantum team? Very tough thing to say, and that's where it comes to this gut feeling. I think like 30 years of work-life experience. I can stare a person to the eye, and I can sort of I think my master skill here is to understanding what drives people, what's their motivation. And also I can see the dark side in all of the cases. And that's where my co-founders and people I work with always, let's say, hate me, because I'm always like, this is a great company, but. And then I'm like, there's a problem with this, one of the founders. And then people are like, oh, she's always so negative. And then afterwards they're like, you were totally right. I'm like, yeah, I have this sixth sense that I hate, but it's been really helpful when you learn to trust it, because you can also see a lot of potential, and you can discover a lot of hidden potential, and nurturing that potential is super important as well.
How much of the potential, or how much of success or failure comes down to the founding team and their interpersonal relationships or problems or potential versus like the technology or versus the market? Like, how much of it is just down to the team?
I would say like probably 70% is the timing, 30% is the team.
Okay.
So if the timing is right, then of course you tend to get this positive spiral. There's always like these moments that you feel that the company is going to bankrupt and the founders are going to kill each other. That will come evidently.
Yeah.
But if the timing is right, you will have these positive frog leaps that you get a big customer or you succeed, for example, delivering the technology, but also that the market momentum around that domain grows. Like, everyone understands now that there's huge momentum around AI. No brainer. But who had that vision before the momentum was there? So you need to believe as an investor that you sort of foresee these opportunities and you roll the dice. But then on these founders, I think it boils down to diversity. If they're all from the same research group, with the same gender, with the same skin color, it's very unlikely that they will succeed. But if it's a founder team who has multidisciplinary scientific background and a commercial talent, strong values, and a really high ambition level, they tend to figure it out. This ambition level is tricky. You ask a founder that, what's your ambition? They always say like, I want to grow this billion value company. And then the first acquisition offer comes along and they're like, let's sell so I can pay my mortgage. So that's why also second-time entrepreneurs are better. Hopefully they've made a bit of money, so they have the patience and they want to show that they can really grow a big company. But also some first-time founders are really ambitious. So you just have to find these people who are willing who really want to make a change. It's rarely the money that the best founders are looking after. They're typically looking to fix some sort of a problem that really nags them.
It's like the intellectual challenge is or part of the drive.
And also part of personality often with the best founders, that they're never sort of satisfied. There's like, they fix something and they're like, okay, but the next thing has to be fixed. And they have this sort of built-in drive to show the world that this thing, what they're building, can solve a major problem, while not being so stubborn that they never pivot. Best founders, of course, pivot along the way. Even deep tech companies, they pivot.
Yes.
So this pivot, changing the direction or offering or market focus or something like that is really critical for deep tech companies as well.
Is there anything you find that is kind of underrated or overrated when it comes to like founder or founding team characteristics or skill sets when you think about how, what's talked about in like a kind of like the startup community? Anything you kind of disagree with that is?
Yeah, massively. This Silicon Valley classic school book example of a founder never exists in Nordics. And what we have here is as good as well. So I'm saying like we should build our own serial entrepreneur culture. And I think, for example, Finnish startup community is doing a great job there, getting the founders together, getting the CTOs together, CMOs together, and sharing this peer example, how to build really ambitious companies. But same in the Nordic scale. So my experience that the best founders are never the easiest ones.
Easiest in what way?
Yeah, sort of it's not that smooth.
Yes, yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough choices, but the best founders are open. They share, they listen, but they also draw their own conclusions. They come back to you by saying like, hey, we're having a problem with this and this topic. This is how we're planning to solve it. What's your take on it? So they very quickly, they don't wait for a month for a good board meeting. So they're constantly on it. So clock speed, definitely. And then what I like about Silicon Valley entrepreneurship is it's of course very opportunity driven. So people are very positive and they see the growth opportunities, whereas the Nordic might be a bit more skeptical and pessimistic and all of that. You need that optimism as well. But many of the deep tech companies, they work with specific industries, whether that's energy or automotive or like pharma. You also need to understand that industry. You can, of course, sometimes change the whole industry, but sometimes you need to play with the ecosystem. So understanding that is really critical as well.
Yeah, I can imagine when you're working with those types of people, there's a reason why it takes a level of brilliance and it takes a level of self-confidence to go out and like take on this big problem with a novel solution to believe that you can do that. I mean, it takes a certain person to do that. So they're not gonna necessarily, guessing always be the most agreeable people to work with, and they're gonna be probably quite independent. First principles thinkers and all that. So probably makes for you probably have a quite interesting job. I mean, not just from the tech side, but just dealing with people who are like, I at least find it like when people are very strong in their beliefs and good at articulating them, you get like these, debates and discussions. That's very interesting.
Best part in my work is to work with the CEOs. I've been a CEO myself. I know what a lonely job it is.
Yes.
You need to have this trust relationship with your investors, and best CEOs can really exploit that. But this extrovert part is interesting because it might be that you're good on stage and you're good in telling a story, but you're not at all good in building a company.
Yes.
So actually I sort of like these introvert CEOs as well. They tend to be a bit better listeners. And we need to remember that it's actually introverts who have eventually changed the world, not the extroverts.
Yeah.
There's just, so many of us who blah, 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 but then eventually you need to have a bit of both probably. And best introverts can sort of learn to become good social extroverts, I guess is the right word. But just saying that, of course, you need to be inspiring and good in storytelling. And but also there's so many other things as well in leadership, in my opinion.
For sure, and I think people maybe underestimate what a big factor credibility, track record, and just that kind of like belief plays a role in storytelling and charisma. Like even if you're not the most, rhetorically like
the best,
but I mean there's tons of examples of these entrepreneur CEO leaders who have been extraordinarily effective at attracting talent, attracting capital, even just by being like, they have that focus, they have that like determination and that belief, and it's very kind of magnetic.
But I guess it all boils down to values. What do you have as a founder? What kind of company you're building?
Yeah.
And typically in the beginning, when you do the things right, that doing right carries you through also the hurdles. But if you start fixing the values only at the point of time when the problems will arrive, it's a bit too late.
Yes. We're kind of coming up on our running out on time here. So I want to ask you a couple of kind of quick fire questions, and then we have a surprise there at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, you ready? Okay. So number one, what's been the most rewarding and most challenging moment for you so far at your kind of Voima Ventures? Or you can pick either one of those.
Yeah, I think my most rewarding moment has been when I'm working with my team. I'm so proud of the whole team that, where they've grown into, and now instead of, being a sort of a venture fund with a tiny team and all of that, we've grown into whole Scandinavia and we all drive our particular field. So I'm really proud of what we've accomplished. So this is, my proud moment isn't an exit or this is how much money we have, but it's really that we have this group of people within our Voima Ventures team who really wants to be on this journey. And they're super committed and we have fantastic trust in the team. So that's my proud moment.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. And then my most challenging struggle, I think it relates to one of our portfolio companies, which has been this huge promise from the start. And I just can't disclose it here, but it's been a sort of something that we've seen, had a couple of major exits on the way. And I've spent a lot of time work on that company. And still these hard times of war and inflation and difficulties of raising capital and delays in various industries and all of that, have taken their toll. And it's not, I just see the hardship of the founder.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship is really hard.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this entrepreneur a lot during the couple of weeks, and I've been there myself before founding even my seed investments and everything. So I've done, one bankruptcy myself, and it's really tough. This company is not doing bankruptcy, but there's been a massive toll on the founder, and that's of course something that I wouldn't want to see to happen.
Yeah, that's very, very understandable. Do you have any favorite kind of contrarian beliefs about business or startups or investing, like things you believe that most of your peers would kind of disagree with?
Would disagree with?
Yeah.
I don't know whether they would disagree with, but I'll give you my 2 cents. First one is that you work with people who have really high ambition level, but that's not enough. They have to have right values. If they don't have the right values, it will go to shit at the end of the day. They'll do something wrong. They'll choose wrong on the way, and wrong person to run the sales, or they take money from the wrong investors, or they make a compromise on the value generation for the company. Wrong values is a red flag. And then of course, having right values, of course, with as an employee, for employees and all of that is important. Other thing is that, I have, the luxury that I've, worked for such a long time. I don't have to anymore work with assholes. So there are a lot of jerks in this business as well, like in any business. So if, the only thing what you have in this business is your reputation. Sometimes you have to make compromises for the sake of that. You sort of not to retain, you never compromise on integrity, but you might have to compromise on other things, even though it would feel tough, but reputation is all you have, and that always applies to you as an entrepreneur or founder or investor or whomever partner. And sometimes maybe younger people forget that we've been here for a long time, and we're going to be here still for a very long time. So it's worthy to take a note of. Did I answer the question?
Yes, it was perfect. Values and reputation, I think those are really good. And I think when you're younger, especially, you don't realize how small the circles are. Like if whatever industry, it's marketing or like deep tech or whatever area of industrial manufacturing, like very small circles. So the people that you come across, you're probably going to meet them again and again, and they're going to talk. And now with LinkedIn, it's like even more connected. And so reputation travels really quickly.
And then my third is something what I actually learned from Harru Santamäki. We're going to talk about him a bit later. That's part of the surprise. But he always said that if nothing else works, how about brutal honesty? And
that's like a very Finnish thing, I feel.
And my caveat from that is that you can use brutal honesty, but in a very friendly way.
Yes.
So if you're not going to invest, if you think there's a problem, if the CEO has to be changed, if there are things that have to be fixed, how about delivering the news very directly, openly, honestly, but also in a humble way, in a way that you would like to hear them from someone else?
Yeah, that's like kind and honest feedback is a gift. It's a great gift.
And faster than later.
Yes.
So I think the Finnish and Nordic way is sometimes a bit like not saying the things.
Yes.
And that's where I like Americans. Americans actually, they say things very straightforward.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah. Given that you're involved with deep tech and you're seeing companies from like, very pre-seed until, Series A and B and, getting ready to kind of bring products to market, is there any kind of technology that you're super excited about? Maybe something that will come, maybe be launched in the next couple of years and really going to have a concrete, measurable impact on kind of day to day? Because I'm thinking like service like ISI and a lot of these things, like they're happening in the background. We don't really understand what it's doing and how it's, but is there something that's going to be like, wow, are we going to get some, basically what I'm asking is like, is there kind of some sci-fi projects that are going to materialize in the next couple of years?
I have so many, but I'll say this one thing. So we've been talking about quantum for a long time.
Yes.
And one of our portfolio companies, Semicon, it's a VTT spin-off actually, and they develop a quantum chip. And it's a small, tiny chip with, tens and hundreds of qubits of capability, and they're aiming for 1 million qubits with the tiny chip. Today, the quantum computers are size bigger than this room here, extremely hard to maintain. They require temperatures and all of that. So I'm super excited on companies like this that can sort of revolutionize the whole industry. It's a bit like what happened with PCs before after the mainframes and all of that. So a bit of the same analogy, open quantum-based computing world.
That would change everything, right? If they were able to get that kind of computing power into like a small chip.
Exactly. And that's what we need in Europe.
That would be amazing. That's good. You've given a lot of reasons to say positive, not just about like the general development, but specifically what's happening here in the Nordics, because what we read and what I've had from so many of these conversations is like all the problems, the lack of growth, the demographic problems, but it seems like we have this really unique and strong research-based technical like knowledge base here in Finland and the Nordics that we're now, thanks to you and like your team and people like you, we're learning how to commercialize them and hopefully bring it to market or internationally. And now we just need that growth fund and like even more money and even more talent.
But don't thank me, thank the entrepreneurs. Being a VC is hard, but being an entrepreneur is really hard. So let's thank all the scientific founders in this ecosystem.
For sure, credit to them. Before we wrap up here, we have the surprise, like I mentioned. We're going to hear a poem.
Yes.
From your upcoming book.
Yes.
Can you tell us about what it is? How did it come about?
I'm dying to. So this book is called Kevätjäillä, so on a spring ice. And as we know, spring ice can be very tempting. Sun is shining, you want to go walk on the spring ice, but it can be also a bit dangerous. So there's a bit of a sides to, and story goes like this, that my co-founder and myself Harry Santamäki, with whom we founded the first seed investment company in 2008, and we co-founded 7 companies together with Harry and Oskari, our third partner. And Harry has been my colleague for 15 years, so we decided to celebrate a bit. So he's been always taking photographs, these fantastic black and white photographs. I think this book cover is even beautiful. It's from Uunisaari, from Helsinki. People are looking at the sea in the spring. The snow has started to melt. The light is back. We're back from our caves after the Nordic winter. And we got an idea that I would write poems to all of his photos, and he has tens of thousands of photos. So he started to send me one by one on a WhatsApp. And then I started to write these poems, typically like in the middle of the night, that I was going through some sort of a thinking myself, and I started to look at the photographs, and then the poems just came. And it's been a wonderful journey to write this. And I promised to read you one, and this relates to a picture where there are 2 people on a thin ice. You can see 2 shadows.
That's in Helsinki, I'm guessing?
Yeah, exactly. Out on the sea. Might be difficult to see the picture here, but we can probably share it on social media or something. And I translated the poem because all the poems are in Finnish. So
Can you do the English and then also the Finnish?
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll do the Finnish one first, or
sure, yeah.
Which one would you prefer?
Finnish first, that's good.
Okay. Hän olisin. Se olisin minä. 2 hahmon toinen varjo. Isoin harppauksin, varmasti tanssahdellen hänen kanssaan, miettimättä, tietämättä milloin kääntyä takaisin. Katsomaan merta, ritisevä jääkukkanen kengän alla. And the English version goes like this. I would be her, that would be me. The second shadow of 2 figures, the biggest, surely dancing strides. With him, thoughtless, unknowing when to turn back. To gaze at the sea, a crackling frost flower beneath the shoe.
It was beautiful. So, thank you for bringing that. When is it published, and where can you get it?
Yeah, so this is available at Book on Demand. If you Google like my name, Inka Mero, poem book or something, you can find it. But we can probably share the link on the podcast story.
Absolutely.
And we're having a book publishing party next month on May at Voima Ventures offices. So hopefully you'll be able to join us.
Hopefully. Inka, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences and sharing the poem. Really excited to follow kind of what you guys are doing. With potential future funds, but also with the current portfolio. I think it's really exciting and it's really good. It's good for the world. It's good for Finland. It's good for the planet. So best of luck to you, to the team, your portfolio companies, and hopefully we'll be able to do like a follow-up conversation and talk about all the exciting tech and the small quantum chip and how it's changed everything. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for having me here. It was true fun and super interesting discussions.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.